this video, we're going to talk about graphing a piecewise defined function, problem type 1. So let's suppose we have this function defined on the interval from -2 to 2 as follows. Now, what this means is this function is only defined between x values -2, including -2 to 2. So our inputs are only going to be from -2 to 2. That's all that means. Okay. So our function is defined as -2 if x is between -2 and -1. Our outputs are -1 if our inputs are between -1 and 0, etc. So let's take this one piece at a time. That's why it's a piecewise function, right? So let's take this first line. Our outputs are -2. Okay, so that means our outputs are -2. That's our y values, right? If x is between -2 and -1. So between x is -2 and -1, our outputs are -2. So that's like having this line here, right? But we need to be careful about one thing. We need to watch our endpoints. Because x can be equal to -2 here, but it has to be less than -1. So on this portion, we're not going to include -1. Now I need to draw this a little clearer for you. We're going to have a hole at -1 because that portion of the graph doesn't equal, at -1 it does not equal -2. What does it equal at -1? At -1, x is equal to -1. It equals -1. So when our x value is between -1, including -1 and 0, our outputs are at -1. -1 to 0. And why did I do an open dot there? Because it's not equal, our x value is not equal to 0 there. Okay. Now, let's look at this piece. Our output is 0, so that's along this x-axis. Our output is 0. Then that means between 0 and 1 of our domain, we're going to have an output of 0. What about this one? Our input is between +1 and 2. So between +1 and 2, our output is 1. And we put circle at 2 because it's less than 2. Remember, our domain didn't even include 2. So we can't have a filled in circle there, right? We have a filled in circle at x equals 1 and y equals 1. Then we have an open circle at x equals 1 and y is 0, etc. So it's kind of like, this is actually called a step function. You can see it just steps up, right? So that's how we would graph that type of function.